Good morning, Nicole.
Morning.
Just want to inform you that Mr. Neil Wesselo, he's normally last on the list. He phoned me this morning and asked to be excused. There's bereavement in his family.
Okay. I'll just make a note. Is he going to be excused just for today? Excused.
What number did you use?
Anyone else? Sophie Lenkwane.
Good morning, Nicole. Lerato Maite for Dr. Sophie Lenkwane.
Thank you. Noted. Thank you. B. Kekana. Beauty Kekana. Council for Beauty Kekana. Council for Priscilla Nyatlo.
Hi, Nicole. Shabangu.
Okay, for Priscilla Nyatlo. Thank you. Is it Advocate Shabangu?
That's correct, Nicole. Thank you.
Ms. Kekana, you're on mute, but it's fine. I do note that you're in person.
You're already the office judge. Oh, okay, no problem. Yes.
Anyone else?
Judge Ceylon.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Judge Tepo will join us at 10.
Nicole, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, Nicole. It's Advocate Profi on behalf of Patricia and Basha.
Patricia and Basha. Thank you. Got it.
Thank you very much, Nicole.
You're on mute, Judge.
Good morning.
Morning, Judge.
Morning.
Good morning, my lady.
Morning, my lady.
May it please the court, my lady. Morning.
Good morning, my lady.
Morning, my lady. Nicole, you may place the matter on record.
Thank you, Judge. Today is Tuesday, the 22nd of March, 2022. Calling case number I-001 of 2021 in the matter of Life Esidimeni Inquest.
Thank you. Before we start with the proceedings today, I just want to indicate that I have looked at the objection that was raised by Mr. Pinar and the submissions that were made in response thereto, together with his reply. And it is my view that the issues raised are issues that I have decided that I will deal with at the end, together with the evidence in the inquest. Thank you. May it please the court, my ladies.
May it please the court, my lady.
Thank you. Can we then proceed? Nicole, can you administer the oath on the witness?
Thank you, Judge. Please state your full name and surname for the record.
Abu Jacobus Pinar.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
And now,
Do you swear that the evidence that you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
so help me God.
Witness is sworn in, my lady.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Pinar. Miss Marriott, do you want to say something before Mr. Pinar starts cross-examining the witness?
No, my lady, just that the witness is here for cross-examination of Advocate Pinar.
Yes, that's why I'm saying he must proceed now. Mr. Pinar, you may proceed.
May it please the court, my lady. Good morning, Professor Pinar.
Good morning, Mr. Pinar.
I'm Advocate Pinar, appearing on behalf of the sequential witness, Ms. Jacobus. My lady, for purposes of clarification, my cross-examination is aimed primarily at the process that was followed in the marathon project with regard to the deinstitutionalization, of mental health care users.
Yes.
May it please the court, my lady. Professor, if I understood your evidence correctly, you had been involved in a process or a project of deinstitutionalization in Northwest Province. Is that correct?
That is correct, my lady.
Could you indicate in what year was that? When was it? What period?
That the first project was in 1995, and the other project would be in the early 2000s. I cannot remember that date when I was at Northwest University. That would be between 2003 and 2005.
Now, Professor, were you aware of the strategic plan 2013-2020?
Could you just elaborate on the strategic plan?
Well, Professor, if my memory does not leave me in the lurch, this was the strategic plan that was intended to result in deinstitutionalization of mental health care users on provincial level?
No, I would not be aware of such a plan because I have not worked for the Gauteng province in those years.
Was any such strategic plan initiated in Northwest Province or not?
Before the deinstitutionalization took place, there was a strategic plan in place on how the deinstitutionalization would take place. That is in bringing in the patients from Gelukpan to Witstrand and then to deinstitutionalize the Witstrand patients to community facilities.
Now, Professor, if you refer to community facilities, is that the same as NGOs?
There's different community facilities. There was the community facilities, which we call the halfway houses. And then there was also the NPO sector. And then there was the halfway houses were run by how we normally call the friends of an institution, like the Friends of Witstrand Hospital.
Thank you, Professor. I just want to request, do not rush your answers because notes must be taken by the court as well as my colleagues.
Okay.
Continue, Mr. Pina.
May it please the court, my lady. Now, Professor, the project you were involved with from Gelukpan, Witstrand to community institutions. How many mental health care users are involved?
As I said previously, it would be in the range of possibly 250 or between the number of 150 to 250.
Is that now, if I can delineate it, is that from Gelukpan to Witstrand or from Witstrand to the community institutions?
Okay, let me delineate it. From Gelukpan, it would possibly be 150 plus. And then from Witstrand to community, it would possibly be, I would say, in the range of 200 plus.
Now, Professor, if I can request, if you say in the range of 250 plus, meaning from 250 up to a certain number?
I'm not so sure because this is long time back. I would speak under correction, but it's definitely more than 250.
And Professor, if I remember correctly, you gave an indication of the time span, time period involved in this process. Could you just once more reiterate what that time period was?
Yes, for the first session from Gelukpan to Witstrand, it was in the range between up in about 18 months to 3 years, and for the second part is between 3 and 5 years.
So the second part, do I understand it correctly, it's from Witstrand to the community.
Yeah, the first part is institution to institution, and the second part is institution to community.
So if I understand you correctly, Professor, from institution to institution is actually an easier process, if I can refer to it as such, than what it is from institution to community.
That is correct, my lady.
And Professor, if I understood your evidence correctly, also you indicated, and I may say it has been substantiated by psychiatric evidence that we heard towards the end of the previous week when you weren't available, that mental health care users, if I can use the phrase, are fickle patients.
I did not understand that phrase. You say fickle?
Fickle, meaning they are temperamental and many of them, due to their psychiatric conditions, are frail.
I would agree that I'm not sure whether temperamental would be the correct word. I would say that unpredictable. And due to the psychiatric illness and pattern, I would agree with you that they are mentally frail, and sometimes in intellectually challenged, they are also physically frail.
So it's just not their mental condition which impacts negatively on mental health care users, but also their physical condition.
Yes, because, yes, my lady, because as I said previously, with intellectual disabilities is on 3 levels, and that's why assessment, holistic, is very important. You do not only assess physically, but also mentally. You do not only assess mentally, but also physically, because there's the biological age that might put the person possibly in 35 years, but then there's also the chronological age that the person might function on the level of 2-year-old with respect, in the sense that you then need to look at the physical frailness of the person or the physical development as the person. So it is true that they are both mentally and physically frail.
Do I understand you correctly, Professor? As a result of these facts that you've just referred to, the utmost care must be utilized when a process of deinstitutionalization is initiated.
You have understood me correctly. Yes, the utmost care need to be taken.
And if I understood your evidence correctly, Professor, where it's a transfer from institution to institution, if I can use the word, it's actually a process which can be accomplished much easier and with less complications than from institution to community.
I would agree with that, because remember, it also depends on the institution, that if the institution is prepared and the institution have got the capacity with regards to personnel, it is easier. And as I use the example which I have had experience of, is that both these institutions, both Gelukspan and Witstrand, the staff had the capacity and the experience to work with the intellectually challenged over a number of years.
Well, Professor, from what you've just stated, it's quite clear that capacity does not simply refer to space as such, but to the care that would be administered.
Yes, my lady, I would concur with that. And the care should not only be focused on, as I call it, custodial care or physical care, but it should exactly zoom into the psychosocial and mental health care of the individual, a holistic care consisting of both physical care if there is a physical comorbidity with the mental illness, but predominantly and specifically to use the example of the intellectually challenged individuals, which we by ordinary call the mental health care linked to the habilitation process, to teach them skills to function and cope in their own context. So it's a dual process of physical as well as mental health and psychiatric care.
And Professor, in order to ensure success in a process of this nature, if I understood your evidence correctly, it was important that the institution from which a mental health care user is going to be transferred to another institution, the transferring institution needs to be satisfied the patient I am referring or transferring will be properly cared for.
I would concur with that, my lady. The transferring institution need to be satisfied with that the person will be cared for holistically, but also the receiving institution also need to be satisfied that I've had a holistic report focusing on physical as well as mental health and psychiatric care. So for me, it's a dual process. It's the transferring as well as the receiving on the other end.
So if I understand you correctly, Professor, it means there's an obligation on the transferring institution as well as on the receiving institution. And the obligation on the receiving institution, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you can proceed. I'm sure I will have clarity.
The obligation on the receiving institution must also ensure that I, as institution, will be in a position and able, I have the necessary complements to enable me to care properly for this particular or these particular mental health care users.
Yes, I concur, my lady. It's a dual obligation.
And Professor, if I just taking into consideration the numbers of patients you referred to involved in the Gelukspon, Wittrand and community deinstitutionalization is a timeous process.
I would concur with that. It is timeous to do this.
Pardon?
I said it is timeous to do these processes.
And the higher the number of transfers that have to be effected in a deinstitutionalization process, would it be proper or correct to say the longer the period for this process should be?
I'm so sorry. Thank you. You would be correct, because even if I do my forecasting, the higher the number, the longer the process.
And it does not only mean the process is longer, but it also means the process may be more involved. Isn't that so, Professor?
Yes, because it depends what the profiles are of the mental health care users, what kind of care they would need on the other side, and what kind of care they are using on the transferring side, and what kind of care they would need on the other side. And then the process is planned around the uniqueness of the mental health care user.
So if I understand your evidence correctly, Professor, a process of deinstitutionalization should be driven primarily keeping in mind the well-being of the mental health care users involved.
That is very correct, my lady. I did mention it. It's about the mental health care user and the quality of care, and not necessarily on other things. The primary core focus would be the mental care user or the mental health care users.
And where transfer is effected from institution to institution, I take it, Professor, there's a certain degree of comfort in the knowledge a particular mental health care user is being transferred from one institution to another institution involved in the same type of treatment, care, etc. of mental health care users?
I would say yes. My experience is from institution to institution, there is a comfort because the capacity might compare very well. And the capacity, I mean the capacity focusing on the care of the mental health care user.
Yeah, and Professor, the converse, of course, applies when it's transfers from an institution to a community institution or an NGO.
I did not understand your statement. Maybe you should simplify it for me.
Thank you, Professor. Well, we've referred now to the comfort that there does exist when it's from institution to institution.
Yes.
Now, once we have a transfer from institution to a community-based, let's call it institution being an NGO.
Yes, I understand.
The same degree of comfort isn't in existence until, maybe I should complete the statement, until there's been a proper assessment of the community-based institution being the NGO.
I would concur with that, and in the assessment, certain standards need to be met because the mental health care users need a certain level of holistic care. So I would concur with that. That the comfort can only be reached when there is an assessment that close to the care or the expected care for the mental health care user can be adhered to.
Failure to comply with these basic requirements, Professor, would that be to the detriment of mental health care users? Or could it be?
Yeah, it could be to the detriment of the healthcare users. I would concur with that because if today I received a certain standard of care and tomorrow, for example, I receive deteriorated care where I don't even get my physical care or the medication that I'm used to, that is to the detriment of the ill health profile of the mental health care user.
Now, Professor, in the Marathon Project, you indicated you were aware of the Marathon Project. Is that correct?
Yes. I did not know it's called the Marathon. I was only aware of, I only became aware when it was in the public domain on a previous situation that it was a very fast process.
Now, Professor, unless my recollection lets me down, the numbers involved was in the vicinity of 2,000, more or less 2,000 patients that had to be transferred. Is that quite a large number?
In my judgment, my lady, is quite a large number. Is 10 times on the is nearly 10 times on the projects that I have worked, or that I had a hand in my experience.
So, Professor, before I proceed with this aspect, you've just mentioned now in your experience, so you've had, besides the Wittrand Gelukspan project, you've been involved in other projects, similar projects, is that correct?
No, that's not what I meant. I meant the projects that I was involved in the Northwest. As I said, it did not even supersede 1,000. So I said it was nearly 10 times the number that I'm seeing here. So it is a big number.
Remember, just to interject, his evidence is that he was involved in the Gelukspan, Veteran 1, and the one from veteran to the communities. Those are the only ones. Am I correct, Professor?
Yes, you are correct. And that is exactly what I referred to, that I say
when you say you had experience, you are only referring to that. Those that you were involved in while you were in the Northwest, 1995 yes. And between 2003 to 2005.
Yes.
Thank you. Proceed.
May it please the court, my lady. I'm indebted to your ladyship. Now, Professor, just to expand maybe on your focus on experience, practical experience, have you been involved in similar projects externally, by meaning outside South Africa?
No, I have not been
other
involved
countries?
in similar.
Sorry?
No, I was not involved in projects.
Thank you. It was indicated, Professor, that you would be leaving for Afghanistan with community-based projects. Am I correct in the way I understood it, or am I mistaken?
No, it's never said community-based projects. Remember, I'm an expert in consultation of education, although it is in mental health, but this is basically in the education, but in public mental health processes is part of my portfolio, but basically in research and education.
Now, Professor, from what you've just indicated, education, where there's a deinstitutionalization process, as you experienced practical in Northwest, and is it of importance that all parties involved, and by parties I am referring to the caretakers, personnel, etc., should be properly educated to perform the task being expected of them?
I would concur with that, my lady. As I said, that there are several stakeholders involved, including the public or the community, as well as educational institutions, and the transdisciplinary or the multi-professional team on either side, where the deinstitutionalization on the whole area or spectrum of where the deinstitutionalization will be taking place. So all parties, all stakeholders should be involved.
And Professor, to comply with these requirements you've just referred to and the obligations, it calls for time. It needs to be sufficient time in which to perform these tasks.
I would concur with that, my lady. Time is a factor, and especially to keep these teams involved and also to curtail the process from one step to another, it needs time. Starting with pre-planning up to the execution of the project.
So would it be correct to say time is of the essence to ensure that everybody is sufficiently and properly prepared to provide proper and sufficient care to mental health care users that are being transferred?
I concur with that, my lady. Time is an essence.
Now, Professor, in the marathon project, we had a situation that approximately 2,000 mental health care users had to be transferred within a time span of 6 months. Could that ever have been sufficient time?
In my judgment as a professional, for 2,000 patients, 6 months would be not sufficient in order to roll out the whole deinstitutionalization project. There was a compromise in time then if it took place only in 6 months for 2,000 patients.
And the more of a rush that is effected in the process, that would reflect adversely on the mental health care users.
When you take the patient as the core receiver or the mental health care user as the core receiver of care, yes, care will be compromised if there is a speed transfer from one institution to, for example, the NPOs. There would be a compromise in care and a compromise in all the steps of the process, even the preparation, because even preparation of the staff on both sides, preparation of the mental health care user, and smooth transfer would be compromised because 6 months is a very short time for 2,000 patients or mental health care users.
So if a project of this nature is rushed, if I can refer to it as such,
yes,
it, in all probability, I want to go as far as to say in all probability, but at least reasonably, it's to be expected it could result in a calamity. Am I correct?
It's a reasonable expectations, my lady. I concur with that. That when something is done too fast, it could create a chaos.
And Professor, as you've mentioned earlier, you have to take into consideration the mental capabilities or situation of each mental health care user, as well as their not only physical age, but their chronological age, if I understood you correctly.
Yes, my lady, quite correct, because not only the biological age, but the chronological age, because that focuses on the holism or the kind of care the mental health care user with intellectual disability will receive, because the functioning of, and especially when we talk about severe to profound, the functioning might be anything from 6 months, and I have not noted those reports being kept clearly, to possibly 36 months. So we would not know what the functioning levels of the mental health care users with regards to chronological age was. And that's why I noted that this were not very clearly stated in most of the reports.
Now, Professor, as you've indicated, you were involved in the deinstitutionalization process in Northwest, where transfers were effected, if I understood you correctly.
Yes.
Now, where the recipients or the parties involved in the transfers of mental health care users, is the preferable method of transfer either singularly or in small groups? Or would it be more preferable to transfer them in busloads?
It depends. I would say preferably in small groups, because patients or mental health care users also have comfort with each other. Maybe if they are from the similar unit, they might recognize in other. I would not, it can be singular, but I would say more in small groups. And in some instances, even if there's a bigger number, there need to be the capacity of healthcare workers in the particular transport that's transporting the mental health care users. For example, if you have 20, you need to have at least 5 mental health care users who is taking care during the transfer from one institution to the other, or from the institution to the community. So you'd look at your staff capacity and the appropriate staff that could take care of the mental health care users. Remember, during the transfer, the mental health care users also need the appropriate care. And they are just not like the people moving from one place that's in the community to the other, put in a bus. And that is not the case. That would be, even if the number is bigger, and I say at around 20, you would have the capacity within the bus, and the bus would have to be a little bit bigger for space for the mental health care users, not in a small bus. But small groups is advisable, with also the mental health care providers there from the one institution to another institution or the community.
Now, Professor, in this regard, where transfers are being effected, it is an exercise which is not common to the mental health care users. It will be something that's new to them, not so?
That is the case. I agree with that, my lady.
And where they are being accompanied with by caretakers, if they are acquainted with the caretakers, it will effect a measure of comfort to the mental health care users.
That's correct, my lady.
Whereas if the caretakers accompanying them are completely new faces, if I can call it as such, which they're not acquainted with, it could it cause a form of discomfiture and anxiety with the mental health care users?
I concur, my lady, because mental health care users, in particular, intellectually challenged mental health care users, are very vulnerable, and they very sensitive to who to take care of them, and that would bring a level of anxiety and discomfort to them, being with total strangers that they are not used to the care. Because remember, even communication or mobility might be compromised in this intellectually challenged mental health care users, and the caretakers or the caregivers who's more used to them would know how to communicate, how to calm them down, and how to treat them, and when they need when they have basic needs, how to identify and care for them during that transfer time.
Now, Professor, would it be preferable when a transfer is effected that it's done during daytime or at night in the dark?
My experience tell me that during daytime is the best time to transfer anyone, not in actual fact mentally ill individuals, because it brings a bit comfort when you could see around you and recognize certain things.
And Professor, am I also correct if I say that the more organized the transfer process is, the advantage is that it places the mental health care user more at comfort, with less anxiety?
I would concur with that, because what you then do with the limited communication skills to the intellectual challenged person, the caregivers start communicating to them about the transfer of whatever they understand. And in about a month or two's time, that message will get through to them that I am going to move from this side to that side. There is a level of a comprehension in anyone when that is done, and that's why we have repetitive communication processes with the intellectually challenged individual and ways of communication, which is prescribed by the mental health care program that most of this mental health care users are on. So if they are, to the limited understanding of them, prepared, and if they have someone that they trust with them during the process, that decreases the anxiety. I would concur with that.
Therefore, Professor, would I be correct of indicating that once, or let me rather put it this way, it's of prime importance that the particular mental health care user or users that are intended to be transferred should be informed in a manner, as you've indicated, by the caretakers of their intended transfer prior to the actual day of the transfer, in order to prepare them properly.
I concur with that, my lady.
So if it's done, or it's not done prior to transfer, and at the day of transfer or the time of transfer, Now, mental health care users are brought forward and ordered into a bus to be transferred, especially if it's at night. It exacerbates their discomfort and anxiety.
I concur that, my lady. Even us as we label ourselves as mentally sound. If someone just come and pick you up in a bus at night, that would be very anxiety provoking. And I can just imagine when you are vulnerable, and especially social and mentally, what the level of anxiety and discomfort might have been. So I concur with that.
Thank you, Professor. Then just a last aspect I want to refer to is I'm not going to repeat, or once my colleagues prior to my cross-examination has specifically taken you to your opinions and the specific individuals who have unfortunately passed away or had passed away. I'm not going to go into that again. The only issue I want to refer to is you made mention, Professor, that you were placed in possession of a docket containing documentation from which you gleaned certain information. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You also indicated, Professor, that in many of these instances, information was lacking.
That's very correct.
And documentation was lacking.
That's correct.
And the said dockets and the documentation was presented to you, if I remember your evidence correctly, by a certain colonel of the South African Police Service.
That's correct.
Did you by any chance, Professor, inquire from the said police official who compiled these files, or where was the documentation obtained from?
What he explained to me is that he's from the NPA, and these files were compiled in the NPA, and he would bring me a complete document what they at that stage, and that was 2019, had on file.
You understand your answer correctly, Professor? You're referring to the docket as prepared by the NPA.
Yes.
Was handed to the police official to deliver to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I understood, because he himself has been working for the NPA office.
Now, Professor, once you received the docket, as you've indicated, you perused the docket and the documentation included. Is that correct?
Just a second, Mr. Pienaar. I'm not sure whether the witness managed to respond to your previous question, because it looks like his screen was frozen.
Sorry, my lady.
Yes,
Okay.
I think, yes.
My response, my lady, was that the colonel that brought the documents to me was working at the NPA offices. And the document or the file as of 2019, what was in the file, that according to his our conversation was all the documents they had on a particular mental health care user. And that was delivered to me. And as I said, that is some time back, and I would not be sincerely aware, and I by the trust of it, thought that that was all the documents that was in the file, because I did ask, and the files were prepared in the NPA office.
Yeah, you keep on breaking down. I don't know whether there is a problem with your connection, because you don't finish your answers.
Let me check. I can hear you clearly.
Okay, I thought maybe the problem was from my side. Come again?
I can also hear the witness.
You can also hear the witness.
Yes, my lady.
Yes, are you agreeing with me?
No, I can hear the witness, my lady.
Everything that the witness says?
Yes, my lady.
Okay, maybe it's from my side. I don't know whether Mr. Pinar was able to hear everything from the witness.
May it please the court, my lady, the witness was audible to me. Yes, my lady.
Okay, maybe it's from my side. I'll have to leave the meeting and rejoin.
May it please the court, my lady.
You are muted, my lady.
Thank you. We may proceed.
May it please the court, my lady. Now, Professor, you've indicated now that when you received the docket via the colonel from the NPA's office, you accepted those were all the available documentation. Am I correct in that presumption?
Yes, you are correct in that presumption that was available in 2019 during the time period I received the documents.
Professor, did you at any stage prior, or let me put it this way, as you've indicated, you perused each of the dockets and the documentation contained therein prior to reaching a conclusion in your opinion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, Professor, did you at any stage prior to finalizing your opinion or your conclusions that you arrived at request specific documentation that you found to be missing in the dockets?
I think if you look at most of my reports, I indicated which documentation were not there that I would have needed, and also which documents that were there were incomplete. So I did make it clear that, and as I said, I asked, I think on one occasion, is this all the documents of a mental health care user, that the file was delivered to me, and that was concurred with. But in my reports, I would have noted which documents I did not have sight of that I would have liked.
Just a second, if I may.
Sorry, my lady.
Do I understand you to be saying that after you had perused the entire docket and realizing that certain documents were not there, you requested that information and you were told that that is the only information? Just explain it properly there, please.
No, let me explain it properly. When the file was brought to me, I asked, is this the complete file? Before I perused documents even.
Okay.
And that was concurred to that is the file that came from the NPA's office. But I then perused the documents, and in most of my reports, I've noted when I needed, for example, the complete assessment report, which focuses on physical as well as mental state assessment, which divulged the chronological age. I have not seen these documents, and I noted it clearly in my record. And the second thing I noted was that it would have been better for me if I had in loco inspections with where these patients are from and to in order to deal with this report. But I clearly stated what was not in the docket and what was incomplete.
Okay, after stating that, did you request for those?
No. Every time I submitted a report, they have brought me new reports. So I did that before time to hear whether the dockets are complete, and that was the message to me, that is the docket that come from the NPA. And after I completed the report, they would bring a new docket to me to look at.
Continue, Mr. Pina.
May it please the court, my lady. But Professor, would you agree with me? It would have been more prudent to specifically request the Colonel to provide you with additional information, notwithstanding the fact that it was indicated the docket's complete. These are all the documents.
Oh, just a second, Mr. Pina.
May it please the court, my lady.
My lady, I really don't want to intervene unnecessarily, but this is taking us nowhere. The complete dockets were given to the witness. Everything that we could obtain. If Mr. Pina would take the effort and go through all the dockets and go through the statements of for instance, Ethel Nube, you will realize that we could not get hold of, for instance, the medical reports or any report regarding mental health care users as far as precious angels are concerned. The documents that were provided to Professor Pina was what we were able to obtain. Whether he asked for more information or not, it's not going to take us any further because we could not give him any further information because that is all that we could obtain from Life Esidimeni and the NGOs.
Okay.
So to proceed in this manner is going to just waste time and take us nowhere.
Mr. Pina.
May it please the court, my lady, with all due respect to my learned friend.
Just before you respond, Mr. Late, if you may clarify, I remember one of the documents that I read, I think it was a statement from Ethel Nube. There was a statement to the effect that documents are at their head office, something like that. And those documents, I think I saw something from one of the, whether it's the investigating officer to say he requested the information, but it was never brought to him.
That's correct.
That is what my recollection says.
That's exactly the problem that we had. We got information that documents are at certain places, and we couldn't find it. If it can be remembered, the Department of Health's offices in Johannesburg burned down, and a lot of documents were lost during that fire also. The documents that we received from Life Esidimeni also was bulky and was very difficult to peruse, as the dates were not also in sequence. So everything that we could find regarding each and every mental health care user, we did give to the professor. And my learned friend, with all due respect, whether he asked the professor if he had asked for it, it's not going to take us any further. We gave him everything, and that is the evidence. What more does he want?
You.
That's
okay.
all, please, my lady.
Thank you, Mr. Pina.
May it please the court, my lady, once more, with all due respect to my learned friend, the question is not a waste of time, with all due respect. It is relevant. It refers to the expertise of Professor Pinar as an expert.
Yes, can we request him to step aside, Professor? Just step aside a bit for us, if we can, okay, so that we can just close this issue. Thank you. Yes.
And my lady, with all due respect, once more to my learned friend, furthermore, an expert is entitled, and it is to be expected, he would request, I require the further documentation. What my learned friend is now presenting, if he wants to give evidence, he may make himself available as a witness, my lady. With all due respect, we've never heard about a fire. Well, at least I have not. I became involved at a belated stage, my lady, and documentation that was destroyed or lost. But with all due respect, my lady, then such information, if the professor had requested it and he had been informed accordingly, he could state in his opinion, in his conclusion that he arrived at, due to a problem of a fire and documents that had been destroyed, I could not obtain the following documentation. And should it come to hand, it may, not it will, it may influence the conclusion I have arrived at. And that's the only point, my lady, and that is absolutely relevant when evaluating the evidence of Professor Pinar at the end of the proceedings to determine what value can be attached thereto or not by your ladyship as this honourable inquest court, my lady.
Thank you.
And on that basis, my lady, I'll put this question to the witness, and therefore it's my submission, it is relevant and I should be permitted. I'm not wasting time for any...
Thank you. You have made your point, Mr. Pina. Mr. Late?
My lady, if Mr. Pina is listening to himself, he will realize that this witness testified and he based what he found in his reports on the reports that were not complete and reports that he did not have. That's why he did not speculate beyond the information that he had in his report, as is expected from any expert witness, to only work with the information that he has to his availability. And in his reports, he states that this report is based on the information that I had at my disposal. To now ask him whether he had asked for any further information doesn't bring this court any further. And I'm an officer of this court, and this is an inquest court. I am allowed to inform this court of the process of investigation without giving evidence. And if Mr. Pina so dearly wants the evidence, for whatever reason, I can call the investigating officer to testify in this regard at the end of the case, but that is the matter as it stands now. To confront this witness on whether he asked it, when I indicated that there isn't anything anymore, it's not taking us with all due
Thank you. Anyone, one more view, then I close the matter?
Sorry, my lady, may I just, before my colleagues answer?
No, I'll give you the chance at the end to reply.
Thank you, my lady.
Is there anyone who want to say something here? There seem to be no one. Any more views before I close the matter? All right, Mr. Pina. Oh, Mr. van Bergen.
My lady, I'm sorry, I was a bit slow out of the starting blocks there. My lady, my submission is that the line of questioning by Mr. Pinar was a valid line of questioning. It is important to know what documentation was available to an expert witness, and if the documentation was not complete, what steps were taken to obtain complete documents before coming to any conclusion. I think what was important in what has come out is through Mr. Late that some of the documentation appears to have been destroyed or lost. That was not information that was previously available, well, certainly not to my knowledge. That was clearly not known by Mr. Pinar either. So I submit that his line of questioning was appropriate, but that the difficulties that were encountered by the NPA, and more specifically Mr. Late and his staff, was that despite efforts to obtain records, they could not be obtained because they had been lost. And I believe that is important information for this court and your ladyship to know, as your ladyship pleases.
Thank you. I saw there were 2 hands. Is there any other person other than... Was there any other person other than Mr. van Bergen? Okay, Mr. Pina.
My lady, just to clarify, I didn't say that the witness knew that of the fire and the documents that was lost. That is just something that I mentioned to this court.
Yes.
For
no, we understand it. In fact, we must just understand that this came as a result of the questioning by Mr. Pinar. The court, up to now, had it not been for this cross-examination, we wouldn't even be knowing that there were difficulties in obtaining information, isn't it? I'm just saying, like the issue of what happened to the Johannesburg offices of the department.
Yes, my lady. No, yes. If it had become an issue.
No, I'm just saying, had it not been the result of this cross-examination, one wouldn't have known. And even then, when an expert testifies, I mean, he has to explain as to which documents did he use, isn't it?
Yes.
Did he peruse to arrive at his particular opinion, isn't it?
And he did, my lady.
Yes.
He said he had the dockets.
Okay.
And the dockets are before the court.
Okay. Then that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Pina.
May it please the court, my lady. I have no problem with the information Mr. Late, my learned friend, has now disclosed to the court that documentation got lost for whatever, due to a fire, etc., my lady. I think I would submit that information, as Mr. van Bergen has indicated, was important information which has now come about, my lady. I do not intend, I'm not going to ride forth on this line of cross-examination with Professor Pinar as Don Quixote when he stormed the windmill, my lady.
Okay.
I'm basically concluded. I've got one or more 2 questions, then I'm finished, my lady.
Also, so you're not
going to be labeled.
In any event, he has answered, isn't it? Has he not answered your question?
Yes, my lady. Basically now, after we've been informed of additional information, yes, my lady. I can understand now. I just wanted clarity.
So what are you saying? Are you not? You are saying you are no longer pursuing that line, or
no?
I'm going to call the witness. I must rule on this issue. Do you want me to rule on the issue, or what are you saying?
My lady, my submission would be, if the court permits me, your ladyship can make a ruling. I do not think it's necessary, my lady, with all due respect, because I'm not going to continue with this line, my lady. I've got one statement to make to the witness to confirm the information we've been handed now. Then it's on evidence, it's on record.
Does that mean that you are abandoning that question, or you just want to, you are no longer following that line?
My lady, I would prefer to receive an answer, but in the light of the information that we've been presented with now by our learned friend, Mr. Late, that's actually going to more basically finalize it, my lady.
Okay, I'm going to allow you to proceed, and the question is allowed. Can we call the witness back?
May it please the court, my lady.
We're just informing the witness to come back.
Okay, thank you, Miss Marriott.
Well, lady, I note it's 11:15. I don't know whether your lady would rather want to take the tea break now, and then I can conclude my cross-examination thereafter. I'm not going to be long anymore.
Okay.
But I'll leave it in the hands of the court, my lady.
My lady, the witness is only available until past. We informed Advocate Pinar about this. So can we conclude his evidence?
Can he just conclude the witness? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You may proceed.
May it please the court, my lady?
Yes.
Professor, would you like to answer? Now, I know time has been. I specifically can't recollect the question I put to you with all the interaction that we've had.
In fact, the question was in relation to the fact that after having realized that the information was not complete, did he take steps to request more information? I think that was along those lines. If you can just rephrase it properly.
May it please the court, my lady, I'm indebted to your ladyship. Professor, I've noted your evidence that you were informed this is the complete docket, whereby is included then the assumption that there aren't any other dockets or documentation available. Am I correct in that assumption, Professor?
Yes, because I asked up front, and that was the documentation available for me to peruse for the expert opinion. And that's why I also stated in my records what I did not see in the file. And now I hear it might not have been there, but what I didn't see in the file and what was incomplete. So in asking me, did I do a follow-up to request for these documents, I think my report is quite clear. As a professional, if you have been given a complete document, what you deem as complete, and you have noted that things are not there, you record it, I think my opinion then goes that despite these documents being incomplete or not there, this is my opinion.
Thank you.
Now, Professor, had further documentation been available, could that have influenced? I don't say it would have or may have. I'm asking, could it have influenced the conclusion you arrived at? Or should it become available at a later stage? May it have an influence?
I think it depends what the documentation would say.
Yes,
I cannot speculate.
Just a second,
the
Professor.
document. Yes.
There is an objection here, Ms. Marriott.
My lady, with due respect, that is quite speculation that my colleague is eliciting from the witness.
Thank you. Mr. Pienaar?
May it please the court, my lady, with all due respect to my learned friend, Miss Marriott, it's not speculation. An expert, and I want to go as far as to say, to submit its common cause. An expert says, had I been in possession of document A, B, or C, it may influence my conclusion. That's all I'm asking. So what I'm trying to determine is the conclusion the learned professor has arrived at, a final conclusion in light of the documentation he received, but should further documentation become available, it may or could have an influence. That's all I'm trying to determine, my lady.
Miss Marriott?
My lady, it's still my respectful submission that it's speculation. Even if the information is provided, we will not know what is contained in that information.
Thank you.
Sorry, my lady, with all due respect. That's why.
Mr. Pienaar?
Yes, my lady.
Yes. Can you continue? I'm not going to allow this line of questioning. The witness has indicated that he worked on the information that was available, and the report is very clear. He has indicated what he didn't have and what he had. If we can just move on this point, please.
May I please the court, my lady? Professor, were you aware of the fact that certain documentation had been destroyed as a result of the fire? Were you aware of that?
I only became aware now. That's information to me. At that stage, I was not aware of anything like that.
Thank you, Professor. Then a last issue that I just wanted to refer to. You mentioned, Professor, that it would have been of assistance if you had been able to do an inspection in loco at certain of the NGOs, if I understood your evidence correctly. Is that correct?
That is very correct.
Did you request an opportunity to do an inspection in loco?
I did discuss it with the colonel. At that stage, we had no conclusive discussion in that, and hence also to note that I came in to peruse the report that they dropped to me, and I don't think that was at the cards of the NPA for inspection in locos, because we normally used to do it at the South African Nursing Council. So I did mention that, but that was never a conclusive discussion around that.
So am I correct then to conclude, Professor, such an inspection would have been of assistance to you and may even have been of much importance? Am I correct?
I would concur with that.
May it please the court, my lady. Professor Pienaar, I want to thank you for your time and your renowned assistance in this matter, which
thank you.
I am quite sure has been of assistance and helpful to all parties involved, especially to me at this stage. I can't talk on behalf of all my colleagues, Professor, but thanks for the time and that you made yourself available on short notice to be of assistance today.
Thank you. I see there is a hand.
Please support, my lady.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pichela?
God pleases, my lady. I just want to apologize because I had problems with my connection, so I was following the proceedings from YouTube and there seems to be a very long delay between the transmission from there and also to the court. The issue that I wanted to weigh in, I now come to realize or it has already been disposed of. But I just wanted to place it on record that with regard to Ms. Ethel Ngube, her version will be that documents were taken from her when her institution was closed by the Gauteng Department of Health. So the documents that she was not able to provide should be in possession of the Gauteng Department of Health. And if they were not there, then it is not her fault. I just wanted to clarify that aspect, my lady. Let's court, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. I take it that we are done with the professor. Evidence leaders or anyone else, I'm going to excuse him. Do you agree?
I'm in agreement with that, my lady.
Who's that now?
Mr. Priscilla's forgot to lower his hand, my lady.
Oh, is that Mr. Wesselu?
No, Mr. Wesselu asked to be excused.
I can't see that person. I don't, if you talk and I can't see your face, it's a problem.
My lady, can't you see me?
Who's that?
It's Peter Wright.
No, I can't see you. I didn't even recognize the voice. Now I can recognize the voice. I don't see you. I don't know. Maybe there is a problem with your camera. So can we excuse the witness?
We can excuse the witness, my lady.
Okay, and we resume after the tea break.
My lady, before we resume, there's nothing else for today.
Oh, so are we done for the day?
And the only other witness that is scheduled for the week, because I didn't get any feedback from Mr. Shibara, and he's...
Can I then first excuse the witness and then we discuss the other things maybe?
Yes.
The witness is therefore excused. Thank you very much for your evidence, Professor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. You are excused. Nicole, just a second. Nicole, if you can.
Yes, Judge, I'm here.
Yeah, just check your WhatsApp.
My lady, can you see me now?
No, I think you've got a problem.
No, Miss Marriott can see me. I don't know what's the situation of the other people, whether they can see me.
I can't see Mr. Late.
So must I go out?
I can see Mr. Late.
I can see Mr. Late. So.
Okay, maybe while I'm not a witness, my lady, I think my voice is sufficient. The only witness that we have scheduled for the week is Prof. Tintinger for Friday. That's the only date that is available.
Oh, on Friday. So he's not available for the whole week?
For the whole week, no. He's on call for the whole week. I didn't get any feedback from Mr. Sibara regarding the cross-examination of the first witness, Ms. Cassandra Chambers. And I also received information that in any way Cassandra Chambers is not available for this week because she's on leave. I believe she's got still got children at school.
So just a second, I'm just making notes here. Is it Professor Tintinga or Dr. Talatala?
No, Professor Tintinger is available on Friday. Remember, Mr. Pislela informed the court of the fact that he will that he didn't get instructions from.
Oh yes, okay.
Now he has instructions again, and then he has to cross-examine Prof. Tintinger on Friday.
So he's available on Friday. So he's not available the whole week.
Well, the whole week is not available, my lady. No. If we want to finish the witnesses that had stand down before starting with the NGOs, then we can't proceed for the rest of the week.
I'm just checking my notes. I let me see. Did you I think Mr. Pihlela, am I correct? Even Dr. Talatala,
yes.
He is supposed to also cross-examine Dr. Talatala, am I correct?
Oh, that's
what pleases my lady. Yes, the cross-examination of the doctor.
Just a second, you didn't cross-examine Professor Tintinja?
Yes. Indeed.
And also Dr. Talatala?
That is correct, my lady. What pleases?
Yes.
Dr. Talatala, we are in the process. We have not yet finalized. And I believe there were those that reserved their right to cross-examine him as well. So that is the challenge.
Mr. Late.
Section 27 arranged or called Dr. Talatala. I don't know whether they will be able to arrange him for any date this week. Maybe they can inform the court as to his availability.
Yes, Ms. Hassim, this is the last week of term. Maybe we should try and see if we can finalize them.
My lady, Dr. Talatala is not available this week. He is therefore, he will have to come in the next term, and he's indicated that he is available on the 26th of April.
Yes, while we're dealing with this, Mr. van Bergen?
Thank you, my lady. If I could perhaps just get clarity from our learned friend, Ms. Hassan, is Dr. Talatala only available on the one day? Because I suspect that further cross-examination will exceed one.
I also had this in mind. But there was something that I wanted to hear Mr. Pihlela on. But can we deal with the issue of Dr. Talatala? It appears it's not only Mr. Pihlela who has reserved his cross-examination, I think. There are a number of others who have reserved their cross-examination. I don't know. Can you check if he will be he can be available that week on another day?
My understanding is that he is available for more than one day, but I just need to confirm.
The 26th with the
26th is confirmed, and my understanding is that he would be available from the 26th. So not just on the 26th alone, but I would just need to confirm.
What would that mean? Would that mean the 26th or the 27th is a holiday? And I'm worried about this 26th because it might be a short day. I don't know, but I don't know whether everyone will be able to sit until late, because once we start, we're not going to stop. I don't think it's a good day at all. If maybe we can move, because the 27th is a holiday. I don't know what day of the week is this one.
It's a Tuesday.
Yeah. So it means if we sit on this Tuesday, then there is a holiday of the 27th, then we sit on the 28th and the 29th.
That's right. Perhaps what I try to check if Dr. Talatala could be available on the 25th. So we have at least the 2 days, the 25th.
Yes, maybe. I don't know whether, yes, but I think that will be much proper. Either the 26th, the 25th and the 26th, or the 28th and the 29th. Because my worry is, will we have a full day on the 26th? But I don't have any problem. I'm available. Because this holiday is in the course of the week. I think we can work on that day. I don't know.
My lady, why don't I take instructions from my attorneys and just get clarity and then provide that to Mr. Late?
But let's hear if what the others are saying regarding these 2 dates, whether the 25th to the 26th or 28th and the 29th, which one is preferable? I don't know, but I don't think they'll make a difference because this holiday is in the course of the week. Mr. Pichel?
Court pleases, my lady. I heard your lordship saying there's something that the court would like to...
No, we'll deal with that. Can we finish this point first? I thought you were responding to this one. Can I hear evidence leaders regarding this date? Mr. Late?
My lady, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, Mr. Pina, yes.
My lady, I think, sorry, I beg your pardon, my lady. Maybe it will be more practical if we continue on the 25th, because the 27th is a holiday, but the next weekend is a long weekend once more, because the 1st of May is a
okay.
on a Sunday, and that's
so the 25th and the 26th.
I would suggest the 21st and the 26th, my lady. I do not know whether there are any of the colleagues that have maybe got plans for that coming long weekend. But if we go 28th, 29th, we can, if the doctor is available on the 28th also, and we do not finish in 25, 26, at least we can continue on the 28th, and then whoever, if there are people that want to arrange a long weekend or have already arranged a long weekend for themselves, my lady, then that can be accommodated.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Late?
Yes, my lady. I think in the when we discussed the dates for the second term, we already discussed not to sit on the 28th and the 29th, especially in regards to the long weekend that follows, because and the 27th, that's a holiday. So, but I would suggest that we sit from the 26th, and if we run over till the
we
till
sit
the 28th,
we sit from Tuesday, 25th.
From the Tuesday,
from Monday.
Monday, the 25th.
Okay.
25th
So you agree with
26th.
Mr. Pina?
Yes, I agree with that, my lady.
Okay. And then, so for this week, where is Mr. Sibara and his team? Mr. Sibara? Yes, I clearly requested that you should prepare yourselves if possible.
We will do so, my lady. I dropped an email in the morning to my senior, Mr. Lade. Maybe he did not see it. Responding to the request about recalling Ms. Chambers.
Okay.
That we are in the process of consulting with our client. We'll give him a signal before the end of this week.
Yes, but I was worried. The reason why I proposed it was because I was looking at this week so that when we come next time, we should concentrate on the other witnesses. Remember, I clearly indicated that I would prefer that before we start with the other witnesses.
Yes, with the new witnesses, yes. We should.
So I'm looking at this whole week as to what we will be doing, but it's fine. Okay. The sooner that is finalized, the
sooner the better. The sooner the better.
Let me know by Friday before the end of the week as to what is happening. Mr. Pichela, Ms. Hasim, before I come to you, Mr. Pichela, can I hear Ms. Hasim?
My lady, we were talking about the week of the...
Okay. 25th, 26th, and then if we do not finish, then maybe the 28th.
I was just inquiring about the week before, not for Dr. Talatala, but just for clarity for our schedule. We had said that we would begin sitting on the 19th of April. And I just wondered if we could get clarity on the witnesses who would...
No, we will come to that. Can we finish all this? Please remind me, can we finish all these other things? Don't be surprised, I've converted this into sort of a case management. So we're not... on record now. All right. Mr. Pichela.
Court pleases, my lady. Yes, your leadership had indicated there's something.
Yes, I want to hear from you about the task that I've given you. I'm so concerned that so far where we are, what are we saying with regard to the three? I think the two, is it the owners of the NGO or is it Mosego Home and Ms. Mokojwa and Dr. Sekukuni and that nurse who was supposed to testify? I think you need to expedite that so that we should know. It's fine, Ms. Mokojwa, you can just step aside. I'll call you when I want to. I just wanted Mr. Pichela to assist us because, I mean, this should be given preference. Is it possible to see what you can do so that I can get a report before the end of the week?
Yes, my lady, I'll
Even
follow.
if I can get that on Friday, because it appears we will then continue on Friday.
I believe so, my lady. I will do my best.
Can I hear you, Ms. Mokojwa? Is there anything that you want to tell us?
No, my lady, I just wanted to remind you the name of Mavis. You said the other lady, so I was just...
Okay, yes, but I know that she was a nurse or she was an employee of the NGO and she's on the list of witnesses.
Yes, a registered nurse.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
you haven't had anything from the...
I have the email. I can send correspondence, my lady, of every week when we follow up with these people. They just take people for, I can't say for granted. I don't know why.
That is why I requested that you should have asked Mr. Pichela to assist you. Okay.
Maybe, my lady, they should also copy me in those correspondences so that I know exactly what is happening.
Can you please, when we finish today, just take your time, communicate with Mr. Pichela. You should be having his contact. Please see to it that you copy him, and then he must start to check with them as to what is happening.
Yes,
thank you. I'll do so.
Are we then saying that...
May I venture a suggestion, my lady? Is it not possible maybe to get one of those witnesses I see with reference to family members? Some of them, we've got their statements. Maybe we can get one of them to fill in the gap for this week. That's just a suggestion.
Which family members are though?
For instance, last week I was referring to one affidavit by a family member for Mr. Razoto as well.
My lady, the only witnesses that will testify are the witnesses that are listed on the sequential list of
I've
witnesses.
not yet added. I think I'm still looking at whether there are some things that I'm still looking at to see if there could be witnesses that I can add to say they should be called.
Yes,
but for now, I haven't done so.
Yes, I think we should at this stage to be continuously for continuation. Stick with the list of witnesses available, and if there's something that the court still needs to know, we can then look at other witnesses, because we have to contact those people beforehand.
Yes,
and,
that's true.
And they have not been subpoenaed. If necessary. What I would suggest is that Cassandra's Chambers is not available this week. Next week the court is in recess. Maybe we can, for instance, call Cassandra's or arrange for Cassandra's Chambers to testify in the week of the 19th of April, because Mr. Pichela still have to cross-examine her.
Okay, you can just check with, just go and look at the email that Mr. Sibara has sent you, and then maybe you can also... Once you agree with him, then you must also liaise with Mr. Pichela.
My lady,
the email only refers to the fact that they will only know by the 25th. That's the only thing that
All right.
If I may, because with the previous witness, there was also reference to Mr. Mola.
Yes, his statement is on record.
Yes, because I didn't see him on the list of witnesses. I don't know if I missed something there.
No, he's not, but the statement is there.
Yes.
Mr.
Now, my worry is, my lady.
All the witnesses.
No, my worry is, Mr. Late. My worry is this. Some statements are being used to push certain propositions, to say this person came and said this and said that. So I'm making reference, my lady, to the objection that was raised by my learned colleague, Ms. Munjalele, who said, if we don't intend to call that witness to come and testify, then we shouldn't be putting the statement across. So I was just trying to get clarity on that, because
the person is not on the list of witnesses, and the statement is on record.
May I just explain to Mr. Pichlela, that is the difference between an inquest and a criminal court. The criminal court, the court may take cognizance of statements that has been handed in without the calling of the witness. That evidence is on record. If there is something that, if there is a discrepancy that is relevant to the eventual finding of the court, of course, then such a witness will be called to explain the discrepancy. But when the evidence is clear and it's not an aspect that is necessary for this court to make a finding regarding the causes of death and so forth, then the court can only take cognizance of the statement. It's not necessary for the witness to testify.
No, then we are all in agreement then.
Okay, all right, then it's fine.
I'm just checking now here. Okay, so this Friday is the 25th.
That's correct, my lady. That's the last day of the term.
So we agree that this matter will then be adjourned until the 25th. Just a second.
That's correct.
I just want to put that on record.
Yeah.
Nicole?
Yes, Judge.
You can check again, please.
Start the recording again, Judge.
Yes. The proceedings are therefore adjourned to Friday, the 25th of April, 2022, for the finalization of the evidence of Professor Tintinja.
Sorry, my lady, it's not the 25th of March.
Not April, my lady. 25th of March, not April, my lady.
Oh, my apologies. Adjourned to the 25th of March, 2022, for the evidence of Professor Tintinja. Thank you.
Yes, please, the court, my lady.
May it please the court, my lady.
Yes, the court, my lady.
As a court, please, my lady.
As a cookie.
As the court pleases.
As the court pleases, my lady.